a policy advisor for the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. So it's great to be with you all today.
And I forgot to tell you all where I live. Where do you live, Maria?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I live in Richmond, Virginia.
And I live in Boise, Idaho. It is now 6:40 a.m. in the morning for me. So I'm wide awake and bushy-tailed. And so I would like the students to please introduce yourselves and tell us the name of your teacher and the name of your school.
Hello, I am Aiden Livesey. I go to St Joseph-Ogden High School. Our teacher is Marshall Schacht, and I plan to attend Washington University in St. Louis.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maisie Ronk. I will be attending the University of Illinois, and I will be majoring in computer science.
Hi, I'm Riley Clements. I will be attending Parkland Pathways and majoring in psychology.
All right, thank you very much. All right, this is Unit 6. Let's get to it. I'll read the question and then you can begin your testimony. This is Unit 6. The first question is, Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time, and how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? What is the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin.
The human condition certainly has changed over time since Thomas Hobbes made that pessimistic statement. It is necessary to look towards the structure of society in order to understand its effects on the human condition. It has been observed through the centuries two general trends. One being that the quality of life in the majority of regions of the world has in fact improved. Excluding current war zones and catastrophes, the overall life expectancy has risen and the overall wealth held by the world's population has increased. The other trend being the increase in cooperation and complexity of our society at the cost of dependency on said society to survive.
200 years ago in the United States, over 90% of the population was self-sufficient farmers who did not depend on any outside force for survival. They preserved all of their natural rights and had little intervention from the federal government in their daily lives. However, this total freedom came at a cost. If someone was too weak to live that lifestyle, they simply died as the majority of people found themselves on their own. The life expectancy and rate of innovation suffered, as well as true natural rights society relies on a population disconnected from one another.
Today, less than 1% of the population are still self-sufficient farmers. We live in what's called a classical Republican society, where the people give up some freedoms and are forced to cooperate in order to advance technologically and economically. We rely on society to provide our basic needs. The problem with this reliance is that in congressional testimony, one expert claimed that as much as 90% of the American population would die within a year just from the power grid being shut off. If the grocery stores stopped restocking and the trucks stopped supplying, then the vast majority of Americans would starve to death, as they are so reliant on society to survive that their life is completely in the hands of society working correctly. However, given we are a much more complex, connected society now, we can innovate at rates never imagined before.
One of the most pressing and dangerous issues facing our nation today is the political divide, and it has grown exponentially in the past 4 years. Gradually, our nation has split into two passionate groups that are, for the most part, unwilling to compromise with one another. One of the most hate-fueled and spite-filled elections in our nation's history happened this past year. The divide widened dramatically and tolerance for one another quickly dwindled. The Capitol was overrun for the first time since 1812 by insurrectionists on January 6, 2021. They threatened to assassinate congressional members and destroyed more than $30 million worth of congressional property.
Further, extremists used the Black Lives Matter protest in the summer of 2020 as an excuse to incite violence, vandalize, and steal. This led to countless injuries and even death, as well as the villainization of the Black Lives Matter movement. However, it is possible for President Biden to unite our nations once more. Some policies that he has put in place or have a possibility of being put in place include rooting out extremism in the military and calling out threats to freedom in America. Rooting out and addressing hatred and bigotry while also addressing current problems gives our nation an opportunity to unify and stitch together our fractured society.
Not only does the United States face domestic challenges, but global challenges as well. Humanitarian issues plague not only the United States, but the entire world. On American soil, undocumented immigrants face horrors from which they came to escape from. This is a common occurrence throughout the world and dangerous to civil rights very much more. Recently, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty of 3 charges in the murder of an African American man, George Floyd. While this prosecution is crucial to the furtherment of reducing the undeniably prejudiced procedures of police, it is only the first step. The issue of police violence stems deeply from America's scarred history of slavery and racism. The issue also stems from the measure of power and control a government officer has over a citizen. Police reform, such as the George Floyd and Policing Act, is the only way to alter the base from which our policing system has always operated from. Governments must employ their influence and create societies in which hate is prevented. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, yeah, you mentioned, I'll ask the first question. You mentioned in your 4-minute testimony that political divide was one of the most pressing domestic challenges, and you did cite a couple of Biden's policies to address them. I want to hear from you. How would you fix the political divide that you have identified as one of the biggest domestic challenges? Be specific, please.
The first thing that I would do is, if I was elected president, I would make a speech saying, as Biden did, saying that we need to unite our nation once more, because if we don't unite, then there is no chance of us ever truly coming together again. Once we have that established, that I want unity and that it's going to be the best for the nation, then I think from there we can make steps with things like police reform and things like that we are heavily divided on, and start making some progress.
Right. Maria?
I want to push a little bit more on that general topic. So you've given examples of policies or even goals that could be stated at the national level or by the president. Can you talk a little bit about what are some state or local policies that you think are necessary to help heal these divides? Are y'all able to hear me okay? Okay.
Sorry, yes, we can hear you better now. Can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. You talked about national policies and things that a president could do about this. I'd like to hear some examples of what you think are some state and or local policies that you think are either necessary to help heal this divide or that you think are most likely to be effective in doing that.
Well, I believe we can start by doing things such as town halls, where we invite people from all sides to explain why they're passionate about their topic and how we can best form a bill that could suit both interests, and in a way to maybe help push the interests of both sides and help us get along better. I think we can do some investigations into the economic effects of certain populations and certain regions of the state, and see how we may best formulate a plan to help create more equity as well.
To add on to my peer, I would also just like to say that by having town halls, I feel like we're giving the minority a chance to speak where I don't feel they've been given the chance to. And I feel like if someone is given an opportunity to speak on what they believe is happening, we'll have much more of an open conversation rather than arguments.
Thank you. So I'm going to follow up on your town hall suggestion. I will tell you that I live in Idaho, and we've actually had some of those town halls, but unfortunately, and we have both sides and even the middle show up. Unfortunately, they just disintegrated into a shouting match and some physical pushing and that kind of thing. So since you're, advocating town halls, how do we control town hall so it doesn't dissolve into a shouting match?
I think it's essential to format things in a way that keeps things civil, such as giving everyone specific allotted times to speak on their ideas. And if there are disagreements, it needs to be enforced that disagreements need to be handled in a civil and non-confrontational way in that type of setting.
To add off of what my peer just said, I think it's also important to understand that I think one of the major reasons causing this divide is the idea that one side is completely right and the other side is wrong. We have to understand that there are reasons for people to believe in what they believe in no matter what. And you have to understand that, you know, there's some issue that matters to them enough to put them there in the first place. And if you invalidate their reason and their passion, then they're not going to listen to you. So you have to understand the problems that may cause people to think the way they do and try to help to solve those problems.
Okay. Maria?
You know, you referenced the recent conviction of Derek Chauvin, and you know, people have really strong feelings about the idea of police reform, and a lot of people actually believe that it is not possible to reform the police, that because of the history of discrimination and the black codes and things like that, that you have to abolish the police altogether. What would you say to folks who believe that you must abolish the police?
I would say that if you're going to make the argument that you need to abolish the police, you have to remember we have to have some form of order. If we completely abolish the police right now, we have no law enforcement. If we have no law enforcement, then there are going to be criminals running the streets, and that's going to cause a bigger problem than what we have right now. If we can simply reform the police, such as like making new regulations for training, things like that, then we'll be able to actually solve the problem and compromise and find a solution that everyone is happy with.
So to add on what my peer just said, they are passing the George Floyd in Policing Act, which prevents chokeholds. It doesn't allow them to pursue any sexual actions towards people under arrest. It incentivizes states to follow these regulations. It abolishes no-knock warrants, things like that. And I feel like this is a really good step in the right direction in order to not just completely abolish law enforcement, but to reform it in a way that makes people believe that it is an equal system and it's not racially targeted or biased.
So in your 4-minute testimony, one of you, or several of you actually, you indicated the first step you would do would be a speech to unite the country. The second step would be police reform. What other steps would you advocate to solve our issues?
So another major issue we have in the country right now is our opioid addiction and just drug addiction in general. And I feel like another way to bring our country together and unite it is to treat drug addictions and things like that as an illness rather than a crime, and just overall find some way to reform our prison system as well.
Any suggestions on specific prison reforms?
I think that if we begin with first trying to being focused more on rehabilitation rather than imprisonment, if we try to put in place programs that allow for prisoners to begin to like gradually adjust back to society rather than throwing them back out, because in my opinion, when you throw a prisoner back out into society, you are just rooting for them to fail, because they have been in prison for so long, they have no idea how to actually function in our society, depending on how long they've been in prison. So if we focus more on rehabilitation, I think we'll be much more successful.
To go off of what Macy just said, as well as not having the experience or the idea of how to function in a society outside of prison after being in prison for so long, criminals or ex-criminals typically carry around the mark of crime with them as well. It's always on their record, and it makes it near impossible for them to ever get a decent paying job or get a good education.
All right, that's time.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'll give you a little initial round of applause, and then we'd be pleased to provide you some feedback. I did enjoy your 4-minute testimony, but I will tell you that I was most impressed with your answers to the cross-examination questions, because quite frankly, my experience is that the 4-minute testimony at this level of competition are usually very good. I mean, they're pretty good across the board. Where a team shines is their ability to answer the cross-examination questions. And I will tell you that that I thought you handled the cross-examination questions very well. You were responsive to the question. You answered them specifically. That's always one of my big points, is to please answer the question. And I thought you answered our cross-examination questions very well. And you didn't hesitate, which shows to me that you were very prepared for it. So good job. I was impressed with your answers to the cross-examination questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To echo what Dan said, you all were fearless, but not in a way that came across as arrogant or overconfident. And I want to encourage you, as you move on into higher education and life, always remember that, like, it's good to be confident. It's also good, if you don't know the answer, to admit that. And I have a feeling you all are well on your way to that. Something else I thought you did a really good job of was very equally balancing, the way you shared responsibility, both for your opening statement and when you were answering our questions. Sometimes teams will have one member who just really dominates that question and answer part, and that ultimately can hurt the team, right? Even if that person has great answers. One piece of constructive feedback that I have for you is, the points that you made were great, and I really appreciated that you made a lot of historical references, and even making the reference to current events and legislation. I didn't really hear references to elements of the Constitution itself, or even the history of how the framers took these ideas and what they put into the Constitution in order to try to make these types of things happen. And so I just encourage you to always try to think, what's the broader picture here? How can I make sure to bring it back to the ultimate foundation of understanding that we're all, trying to improve in together? But again, you guys did an amazing job. This has been a weird, hard time for everybody. Your junior and senior years basically just got like a grenade thrown into them. So I'm glad that We the People is providing you some normalcy, and I'm proud of you and hope that you're proud of yourselves.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes it. Thank you for coming. We enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon or morning. Okay, I'm
Thank you
going
guys
to.
for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.